What is going on, everyone? My name's Boit, and we're back with another tier list, new patch, completely different balance, lots of nerfs to the big gods, some buffs to some weaker gods, and honestly, I'm going to be predicting some very different sort of situations here coming in terms of balance in this new era that we are entering into. The longer Retold is out, the more the obnoxiously broken strategies and units are getting toned down, and the more eco macro type play is starting to shine. It comes twofold, right? Macro play was actually pretty good at launch in Retold on the first balance patch. It's just that no one really knew how to defend against all of the different things that was possible. A lot of the strategies were timing based. A lot of the attacks were getting wins, and people playing for the defensive two-town center ideas weren't working. But that's kind of shifting now as players are realizing, well, in order to min defend and get a town center, I got to do X. Or that god can't actually stop me getting a town center, so I'm just going to go and do that. Or sure, we'll just play for a one town center idea, but we're going to play a defensively macro-based idea. Nonetheless, there are two gods right now that I think are well and truly in the A tier, or in the S tier, I should say, just on the fact that they were already pretty strong, and then they got sent to the moon with everything else getting nerfed. And those two gods here are Ra and Gaia. Let me tell you a little something. Ra, I said he was A tier in the very first patch, and when this game launched. Reason I said he was A tier was because I think I had an account that was 100% win rate with Ra. And I was taking games off the best players. To name drop just one, I beat Vortex with Ra on the very first patch. And the reason why Ra was struggling back then wasn't because he was underpowered, it was because he was misunderstood. Rain later in the game, very different to Legacy. You've got to sit in your base, you've got to macro correctly, you've got to be aware of what your opponents can do, you've got to play around it, you've got to get the scouting in. Now, Ra boosted to all nines, players are able to do all of this stuff that was possible before, but even better now and with more power. Now, Ra did get a slight nerf, large nerf, however much you want to talk about it in terms of the electron bullets, making slingers not really that big of a deal anymore for Ra because he got boosted in the chariot archers. There is arguably no reason for Ra to build slingers anymore. Chariot archers are just better in every single way. They've got more range than the slingers, they've got more DPS than the slingers, and they've got techs which boost the range as well, which is going to give even more of an advantage even against counter archers. For example, if I'm playing against Peltast, I don't want to build slingers, I'm going to be losing that matchup anyways, or that trade anyways. I'd rather build the chariots there and snipe from range, keep outside of the range of the Peltast, and micro back when the Peltast start attacking me while still having more value against those infantry units. Does Ra have any kind of weak matchups in this patch? I'm looking at these gods going, not really. There's an argument that maybe Gaia, maybe Oranos, probably Kronos are going to be decent against Ra, but arguably he's got all the tools that are needed to deal with these gods, and it's going to come down to some sort of a skill matchup because he's got the economy to compete. Just needs to make the right units, make the right reads in the game to find wins. He's also got a ridiculous power spike in the Mythic Age with Son of Osiris, though. Getting there against Implode and all of the power that Gaia has got, this is the question. Is Ra going to be able to deal with that? Time will tell. I think he's got all the tools to deal with it. But then again, it's not enough for me to say Gaia here, not going to be S tier. So I think these gods are really, really close. Gaia beats Isis, beats Set out. The boosts that they got for the chariot archers, just not going to be enough for them to compete. They do not have the economy to deal with Gaia. That's not a matchup to worry about. Gaia does have a little bit of problems against Norse in particular, but even then we're still seeing Gaia players, specifically Kavoth, being able to inch out victories there by going through Leto. So she's got an answer there. There's a rough matchup against Kronos and Oranos for Gaia if you go Oceanus because of the Promethean spam. But again, Leto is your answer there for Gaia to deal with those Prometheans. The automatons are going to be able to win out, going to be able to repair themselves. You just want to play a defensive game anyways as Gaia, so it really plays into that. I don't see a path forward for the Atlanteans against the Leto, though I'm yet to really see Gaia players heavily go into it. Watch for Kavoth to show that through his streaming and all the other good stuff. I'm sure he's going to be able to work it out. And then I think Gaia is beating the Greeks pretty heavily, and obviously the Egyptians. So it's just going to be that Norse kind of issue for Gaia. I think that Gaia's going to be able to get over it with good play most of the time. And she's very simple to play. That Gaia Lush that was boosted in the previous patch, and no nerfs for Gaia, basically. Like, maybe just a nerf to implode, but it's not really that much. No nerfs to Gaia. And also, she's now got access to an even stronger Tartarian gate. So she can actually go Hecate here in certain situations, if need be, and have success. So she's got two different routes to go in the late game, or the mid-late game, to get a big power spike to finish a game off. I think she's going to be terrifying. I think she's got a lot of tools here. So the big questions are, what comes next? Because last patch we had Thor up the top, we had Loki up the top, we had Oranos kind of at the top. What happened here? Well, let's talk about Thor. Where is Thor going to be sitting now? Thor got hit with a very, very big early game nerf, but he got a beautiful mid-game to late game boost. What is that? Dwarven Armory costs more wood, but as the game goes on through his ages, he's going to get armory upgrades training faster. In the in the archaic age, they train 50% slower, which means you're not going to be able to do that 4 dwarf build order that you used to be able to do. However, you're still able to do a Dwarven Armory opening and get a competitive advance time. 4:15 is possible with 2 coming on 3 dwarfs, so it's still decent, just not oppressively broken. And also, Thor can play more heavily into a kind of early meta idea of doing a 3:30 advance time, getting the armory a little bit later, getting those armory upgrades in a little bit later, but putting the pressure onto his opponent through Freyja. So he does still have some gameplay. It's going to take a little bit to get worked out here. I think that he's probably still sitting in the top echelon here. I'm going to place him in B tier just on the fact that I think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get worked out. But if he does, and people kind of work out how to get him to that nth level, I think he's going to push up and start competing with pretty much everyone. I've already watched one game where Thor looks really strong. One other boost that he got, which was a hidden bug in the previous patches, his Dwarven Goldmine wasn't working 100% correctly. Now it costs more to reuse, but it's actually working correctly. So he's getting even more economy through that. So it does help him in the mid game, hurts him in the late game a little bit because of the cost, but you know, it's not really going to be a big deal there for him. I'm going to place him in the B tier for now. Expect him to have success with the really good players and kind of having a little bit of trouble lower down until people kind of work out which way to go. Is it going to be the fast advances? Is it still going to be Dwarven Armory? Obviously, have to wait and see. Next gods here, I'm going to skip Poseidon for the time being. I think Kronos and Oranos here are sitting fairly heavily in the A tier. They are still gathering favor insanely quickly. They're able to pump out Prometheans or automatons here. I think that the age of Oceanus is kind of going to die off, is my prediction, with Atlantean players saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to advance 355 or even 420 into a game, given how much later these advances are getting, and they're going to be going for mass Prometheans to overwhelm their opponent in the mid-classical age, following that up with crazy heroic age timings. If they can get up to like 7, 8 oracles out through the classical age, they're going to be able to spam satyrs, click chaos a bunch of times, and have a really, really good game. Obviously, Uranus has also been hit with the Sky Passage nerf, but that's not enough for him to stop using it. And where Sky Passage really does shine was never really in the early game. That was just something people did because they could. Sky Passages are a big help in the late game, getting around the map nice and quick, and he's still going to be able to do that even with the nerf. For those of you who don't know, it's like 50 wood, 8 favor now, so he does get a small 8 favor, 10 favor. He does get hit with a small nerf towards his actual favor pool if he wants to use those Sky Passages. We'll still see them, but I expect him to be getting himself a couple more oracles out early to make up for it. Not going to be a big deal for him. He's still really, really strong. Next god here is Zeus. This is a funny one. Zeus is sitting in a place where he's kind of only got one angle to go. I do not think Hermes is very good with Zeus anymore. Reason being is not because the Centaur aren't amazing. You can still make it work. It's just that Athena is where it's at. Not only are you getting that Sarissa tech and to a lesser degree the shield tech that comes with Athena, it's not as important, but that Sarissa tech is really, really good for those hoplites, but also you're getting Minotaur. And what Minotaur do for you is it gives you the advantage in the Norse matchup in a big way. I'm yet to see a Norse player really deal with mass Minotaur well. I'm not sure if it's because the Norse players haven't quite worked out how to defend against it, or if it's just really, really strong. And with everything else pushing the Zeus player through with hoplites into the mid game, yeah, he's going to have a great time, but he is very, very one-dimensional. So if that strategy kind of stops working, he's going to be a very average god. And as such, I don't really know where to place him at the moment. I think the strategy is good. I think it's going to give him some advantages. I'm going to put him in the B tier just next to Thor here, and we'll see what's going to happen. You will notice I'm leaving Poseidon here for a reason. I haven't quite decided where to put him on the tier list just yet, so I want to see where I'm going to place everyone after everything kind of comes through here. All right, we're going to skip over Loki as well. He did get hit with a nerf. Isis is one of those gods that got buffed, and she got buffed and nerfed at the same time, with Eclipse having a slight nerf, but minions going up in value, and also the Chariot Archers coming into their own. Now, Isis hard loses to Ra, so I don't think that Isis should ever be beating a good Ra player. Ra has got all of the initiative in the matchup. All he has to do is survive against an Ancestor's Eclipse timing, and he wins the game. So you know what's coming for you every single time. If the Ra player goes down the angle of maybe going Hathor and Osiris to make super camel riders, Ra's got that as well, but better with 15% bonus. Ra basically can't go full Migdols because of the 15% HP bonus that Ra's got. So at best, Isis is kind of like a budget Ra. She does have Thoth, which is still decent, but it's been hit with so many nerfs. Just don't see it being that valuable in this matchup. And you're just playing an uphill battle against Ra. Maybe on some maps, Isis is going to find a win with a strong timing. But honestly, I just don't see it. So you can't place her in S tier. I don't think that the Chariot Archers are going to be strong enough to be competing with the power of Atlanteans just yet. But can she beat Greeks? Yes. Can she beat Norse? Yes. So I think that this god is also going to go into the B tier at the moment. It's a difficult one to say, but we're gonna run with B tier and see how it goes. Next god here to look at is Hades, and Hades' oppressive strategy did get nerfed, which was going through Ares, making Cyclops, making Toxotes, and underworlding into your opponent's base and causing ridiculous amounts of damage, winning fights that he probably doesn't have any business winning. That strat was nerfed. It's still going to be there, but whether or not it's as effective or not remains to be seen. That being said, he's still got Minotaur. He's still basically Zeus in that sense, but Favor is a little bit slower, though his Minotaur are much stronger. So he gets basically all the advantages which Zeus gets, but more. Plus his archers are better, which is really, really important. There was a weird change to track rating and stuff. I'm yet to see that really impact the archer ball. that you can make. It might be the case that they're a little bit weaker, but nonetheless, I think that Hades can compete against these Atlanteans. I think that Hades can compete against these Norse players going through Athena. I think that he's going to be having some troubles against Gaia and Ra, but there is a path to victory there with the late game being so strong, especially against Gaia with Hoplite Peltas coming in. If he can survive against the Implode, which is definitely going to be something that's possible with Curse, Earthquake, Underworld, any sort of restoration, any sort of like mixture of these god powers might be able to keep him alive there, and then he's just going to be able to roll over the Gaia player. So I don't think he's S tier. I do think he's competing with the Kronos and Oranos in a good way. I'm going to put him ever so slightly above the Atlanteans in this top A tier kind of spot. And now we move over to Loki, and I'm starting to look at this god going, I think I've got a feeling for where to place this one at the moment. Loki got hit with a tiny nerf. He's lost his omniscience. This isn't enough to change his win rate. I think him losing omniscience is just like, okay, now you might get caught by a raid at some point that your opponent throws at you. So you just have to be a little bit more careful with where you place your villagers. It's not going to change his ability to win games. He's still got Berserk Narok, which is going to be enough for him to take out some Gaia players. He's still got just a regular full Herso build, which are really tough to deal with. He's winning, I think, most of the Atlantean matchups here. In fact, I think he's winning all the Atlantean matchups, even against Gaia. I think he's got the advantage. I do not think he's got the advantage against Ra, which is the challenging god. And he's going to be losing against Set and Isis as well. So he's in a great spot. I don't think he is S tier, but I think he's going to be in that A tier just on the fact that he's beating so many different gods. If the Loki players can get to the level where they're able to deal with the oppressive Egyptian kind of Anubites, Sphinx, Axeman sort of styles, I'm not sure what the answer is there. There's some tricky kind of village center ideas that I've come up with. I've seen some Norse players being able to control the army in a way that gets them the win. We did see a pretty big win for Loki against a Egyptian in the recent Genesis tournament. So I know it's there. And if the Loki players can get that done consistently, then yeah, he becomes an S tier god. But I'm yet to see that consistency. It's really, really challenging. I'm going to place him in this A tier, just in between Kronos and Oranos. I think Hades is another difficult matchup for Loki to deal with. So yeah, there's a lot to be questioned about Loki's A tier presence here. I still think he's really strong. That bonus damage he gets on his counter units is huge. Following this one up, we've got Odin. I'm going to skip these three gods here. I'm still not sure where to put them. Odin is basically budget Thor in a way in the last patch, but now I think he is just better than Thor in this patch. We actually saw Thor dropping to Odin in the mirror. So the Thor versus Odin matchup, we saw Odin players manage to find some wins against Thor, and it's starting to make it seem like that early Dwarven Armory idea isn't really enough to turn the tides when Odin has Hunt bonus and Favor bonus as well. So he's sitting above Thor, but he's still got all of the problems which Thor's got, which is how do you beat Egyptian? How do you beat Hades? Maybe you got an advantage against the Atlantean, but you've still got the problem of having to deal with Promethean, which I think is going to be really oppressive for the Norse to deal with. And Gaia, I mean, you have to play a really good game to beat Gaia. So I can't put him any higher than Zeus in this one, though I still think he's a decent god. Following this up, I'm going to put Set in here next. Set is my favorite god to play. He's my best god, and I think I got the most knowledge about Set in matchups and everything. I think Set loses to Ra. I think Set loses to Gaia. I think Set loses to Hades. I think Set loses to Kronos. I think Set beats Loki. I think Set loses to Oranos. I think Set beats Isis. I think Set goes equal against Zeus. Maybe has a trouble against Zeus. I'm not sure, but it's close. I think Set beats Odin. I think Set beats Thor. So he's beating a handful of gods, and then he has to outplay everything else. There's some potential to outplay with Set, but he's just been neutered to the nines with losing his star. And he basically, like I said, with Ra, you basically don't really want to build slingers very much anymore. The most you want to build is like a handful of them in the classical age, and then transition into chariot archers in the heroic age. The problem with transitioning into chariot archers is they just take so long to mass out, especially when you've already invested into a whole bunch of barracks buildings. You have to go like 3-4 barracks, 5 barracks, and then you have to throw down 2 migdols when you hit the heroic age, and then you have to somehow get that mass up before you get taken out. It is quite challenging, though. I do think, as I said, he's got a really, really strong classical age against those Norse gods. I don't know if this goes above here or not. I just don't know. I don't know if we put him over here or we put him over here, but he is in a struggled spot at the moment. Next god is Freyja. I don't know. To be completely frank, I don't know. I don't think people are playing Freyja to the best that they possibly can at this moment. So he's in this weird state where it's like, by all metrics, it makes sense that this god is really, really good. He's got Freyja. I don't think Ulla is your best bet. Lots of people go Ulla, and I don't think it's your best bet 9 times out of 10. But let's just go through the matchups. I don't think he beats Ra. I think Ra is just outscaling this god at this point. Chariot archers are going to be at making Norse's life a living hell. So yeah, you're not winning Ra in the eco anymore. The only way to win is to get some crazy Tempest, Inferno timing type thing, and Ra can obviously shifting sands away from that. You're not beating Gaia at all. Gaia is going to outscale you in a really, really big way when the game actually matters, which is in that mid game. I don't think you're getting into a gold. You're not getting a gold mine. If you can't go for a 5-second town center, you have to play one town center against the Gaia. Gaia's going to have all the advantage there, in my opinion. Hades, I don't think you're beating Hades. Hades has got those Minotaurs, which are really, really challenging to deal with. Prometheus from Kronos and Oranos is going to be an issue. Loki has got all the advantages leading up into a gold starve. If you can somehow survive, Loki's going to lose. But I don't think that's very likely on most maps. And then this next tier down, I mean, it's getting the same problems here. Zeus is winning with the Minotaurs. I think that's a very, very easy matchup for Zeus. Set's basically winning on most maps. On the closed maps, Set can get into some trouble against the defensive Freyja, especially once you get into that like full pop mid game in the tech. The Freyja army is going to start winning there, but yeah, on those open maps, I don't think that Set's got any problems, especially if Set goes for Anubis. Odin, I think, is beating Freyja in the open maps. On the closed maps, maybe Freyja can win. Thor maybe has a bit of trouble just because that early game takes a little bit to get going if he goes for the Dwarven Armory upgrade. So let's put Freyja in C tier here because I just don't think he's winning enough gods. I think Thor, even though I put him this low, I think at least he's having a competitive game against most stuff. Now we've got Poseidon, and Poseidon has been this god that I've just consistently put into D tier, and I just don't know, man. I think there is a lot of room for Poseidon to make things happen. I don't think Poseidon's beating Gaia. I think Poseidon's got a decent game against Ra, though. I don't think it's terrible for Poseidon against Ra, just on the fact that he's going to have those cavalry boost, especially with Hermes Dionysus, or Ares Dionysus even is pretty good too, with that Phobos' Spear of Panic to make Prodromi to deal with the Migdol units. But Ra is going to go for Spearman Chariots against Poseidon, and Poseidon is going to have to go, what do I build here against this? Can I go for Peltast here? Ra can go Sekhmet and get Bone Bow for the Chariot Archers and get out of range of the Peltas. You're never going to get in range of them. That's a really, really good player. Horus is going to get hit. Those Spearmen are going to run over everything, so you can actually move away from the Chariots until you start making a pass best. So yeah, it's going to be a challenge there for Poseidon. I think he's got the timings in with the Dionysus push to get some wins. Yeah, as I said, doesn't beat Gaia. Decent competitive game against Hades. It's a pretty close skill matchup against the Kronos and Oranos thing. I think he's struggling in that matchup for the time being. That might be changing if the Poseidon players start working that one out. Loki's pretty good into Poseidon, I'd say, especially just if the Poseidon player goes mass Hippias, you can go mass Herser, and then you just get all the myth unit spawns, have a really good game. I think Poseidon's decent against Isis. I think Poseidon might actually even be losing against an Athena Zeus at the moment. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it. I think he might be. Idea is you make those bull minotaurs, and then the centaur just that you want to make is Poseidon just start going. And when you get to the fight, they just go, wait, those minotaurs aren't dying. They're chasing me down. Oh, my centaurs are out of the fight or dead. Plus heroes as well and all the other good stuff when the fight actually happens. So you have to get value with the centaur, and I don't think it's necessarily going to happen. Set versus Poseidon, pretty close matchup, pretty skill matchup. It probably might even be slightly in favor of Poseidon at the moment because of the weakened slingers. That being said, Chariot Archers being good now might mean that the mid game is a little bit more challenging for the Poseidon player if he doesn't get that advantage going early on. Poseidon versus Odin. I think the Thor players and the Odin players and even the Freyja players are going to have a decent time against Poseidon. So Poseidon really only liking his chances against Ra, Hades, Set, and Zeus. I think he's still in the C tier. Just on that fact, I just can't see him. I guess he's decent against Gaia, against Isis. All right, I'm going to put him up here next to Set. Just on the fact that I think he's got enough decent matchups here. But yeah, struggling against the Atlanteans, struggling against the Norse. I'm putting Freyja at the bottom. I don't think that's 100% accurate, but I just don't see where his advantage lies. And that's probably more from me than anything else. He's definitely won some games in Genesis, so it's not like he's a terrible god. He's getting picked quite a bit. In reality, it's a pretty close tier list, though I do think those S tier gods are going to be very difficult to crack when the players work out where all the weaknesses lie, and I do think that they're sitting at the top alone in this patch. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. My name's Boit. Have a fantastic day. Leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one.